All right, let's get started. People will find their way in. We will lure them with candy and welcome them into an afternoon session right after lunch. Everybody wants to go sleep, right? Sleep or sightsee. That's what everybody wants to go do. My name is April Lawton. Thank you for being here. We have got a little army that I'm going to introduce you to in a minute that's going to be presenting today. But first, I wanted to just ask you, has anybody ever been to Nebraska? Hey, okay, that's way more than I was expecting. That's really good. Well, so for those of you who haven't, we're often thought of as a flyover state. That's where I am from. But we do have one of the world's best zoos. Have you ever been to the Omaha Dorley Zoo in Nebraska? Oh, not quite. Not as many hands for that one. Okay, Joel, got you. All right. We also have the largest U.S. aquifer. Does that shock anybody to know? Yeah, we're landlocked and we have the largest U.S. aquifer. So congrats to us. We also have the largest porch swing. It fits 25 people. So if you ever want to try it, come out to Hebron, Nebraska, and you can sit on the world's largest porch swing. For real though, we have some really incredible adult educators to introduce you to today from Nebraska. In person with us, we have Jessica Johnson. She is from Central Community College in Nebraska. They're spread out. We'll show you, we'll introduce you to their programs and where they're all located at. With us virtually then, live from Nebraska, actually, we have Emily Duncan in the middle there for the people in person. Emily Duncan is from Northeast Community College, based in Norfolk, Nebraska. It is called Norfolk because it used to be North Fork. So don't go saying Norfolk. They'll correct you. Okay. And then last but not least, we've got Ryan Hines. He is the Director of Adult Education and the CFO, actually, from Crete Public Schools in Crete, Nebraska, which is just a little outside of Lincoln, Nebraska. All right. Let's see if I can switch this over. All right, so here's your people. And to kick things off, we're going to learn a little bit about each program, and we're going to start with this map here. Any guesses on which program that is? You can choose Crete, Central, or Northeast. Oh, okay, good. Those of you who know your geography, it is Crete Adult Education. So Ryan, if you would go ahead and kick us off by introducing us to your program.
Thank you, April. Hello, everyone. Like she said, I'm Ryan Hines. I'm the former director of adult and family education here. This is my first day as CFO of Creek Public Schools. So this is one of the last things I will get to do for adult education, and I'm honored to be with you today to be able to share this information from a great program that we have here at Creek Public Schools. Like she's mentioned, we're just a community right outside of Lincoln, the capital of Nebraska. We do serve a pretty generous area, though. There's about 30,000 people within our service area, and we share that service area with another community college out of Lincoln. We are the only adult education program that runs out of a public school in Nebraska. In the past, a lot of programs did run out of public schools, but most of those have transitioned over to the community college system, and we are the last remaining school district. We're proud to serve 300 students, sometimes more annually. We're basically an EL program, though. Often 95 to 98% of our students are EL learners or former EL learners who might be moving on to adult basic education or GED preparation. Generally have 10 to 14 teachers plus volunteers and some support staff. We have 2 locations, one for the daytime, and we have a different location for our evening classes. And of course, we also are a hybrid program that we do virtual classes as well.
Thank you, Ryan. How many of your programs are similar in size to Ryan's? 300 to like 400? Okay, awesome. Very good.
Nice.
All right, any guesses on this one? Your choices are Central or Northeast? Yeah, good guess. In person here, Central. Okay. Central Community College. So I'm going to pass the mic to Jessica, who's here in person, and she's going to introduce us to Central.
Thank you, April. Hello, everyone. I am Jessica Johnson with Central Community College. Our program serves about 2,100 students, or we have served 2,100 students so far this year, 49 different languages, and in the past month, we have had 1,300 either in class or on distance apps like BE, Learning Upgrade, GED Flash. We are dominantly ESL, but that varies from site to site. And so with so many different sites, we have an administrative team. So we have our director, assistant director, and then 5 area coordinators. So I am a coordinator. My area is Hastings, right down south here. And so with that, all the different things, the biggest variance is size. So our largest site is Grand Island, just north of Hastings, with about 930 students, all the way down to, or all the way up to Ord, the northernmost site, with 4 students. So structure is very, very different. 2 of our locations are partnered with local nonprofits, so they heavily utilize volunteers in the classroom. And then one of our sites is also, they have kind of a, technically a separate site that is family literacy. So lots of different implementations. We even have one site that is so dominantly ESL that our GED and ABE students either have to attend classes online or they have to use the distance learning applications. So you name it, we got it. How many of you have a similar size? Okay. What about like site-wise? Anywhere between 1,000 and 4? Okay. And with that, I will pass it off to Emily.
Because she's clearly the last one here. So Northeast Community College. There we go.
So the fun little thing about our service area, I'm going to throw it out there. We're a mini Nebraska. So if you actually looked at our map of our layout, it would look like a mini version of the state of Nebraska. So we pride ourselves on that, and we think it's a cool little addition for us. I serve 20 counties throughout the northeast part of Nebraska. We are landlocked by 2 other states. So we border South Dakota and Iowa in my service area. So yes, we do serve students that are crossing state lines because of different programming or works best for them. We have a little over 900 students this year. That's a higher number than we've served in the last few years. We've been up to 1,000 before in our program, but primarily about the 700, 800 range. We have primarily about 500 ELL learners. In our area, our 2 kind of biggest campuses are going to be our South Sioux City and Norfolk. That is primarily where most of our students are coming from. And then like Jessica's program, we might have 5 students in another program, 10 here or there. But primarily our classes are about 20, 25 students in Norfolk and South Sioux City. I have 22 instructors underneath me, and also I do use volunteers. In my other locations, we have kind of 12 sites going throughout the 20 counties. And in some of our classrooms, we have maybe 1 or 2 languages going on, up to about 26, 27 languages. So definitely a lot of diversity in our classrooms, and where it's making that hard part of, I just don't have one translation that can serve everybody. So we battle every translation app possible to help those students learn. So grateful to be here, and feel free to shoot Ryan and I any questions in the chat. We'll kind of be watching that too.
Perfect. Okay, so who is similar in size to Northeast? Oh, so we've got more Cretes and more Centrals in the room. Okay. As Emily said, as we move on, those of you who are in person or virtual, feel free to put anything in the chat. You can, if you're in person, you can obviously just raise your hand and ask. We're very informal, very flexible. But feel free to pop things in the chat. Our team member Catherine over here is managing the chat for us so wonderfully, and so she'll interrupt and pop us through as we go. Okay. All right. So moving into the 23-24 program year, all Nebraska programs were really looking at increasing the rigor of their programs when it came to testing. The state decided to implement CASA steps in July, like late July, early August of 23, and just as soon as Octave permitted. Like the state director submitted the new documentation end of June, and Octave thought he was kidding, and so they didn't approve it for like 6 to 8 weeks later. But he was ready to go. He wanted to change everything up. The transition to CASA steps really became the instigator for other changes as well. So what we're going to look at today are 3 of those big changes that came along with the shift to the CASA steps. How many of you in the room use CASA steps? Okay, we're not going to be talking like heavily about the details of CASA steps, so don't worry if you don't use that. This is really about implementing rigor on many levels. Giving you away my answers, sorry. Okay, so let's define rigor. If you had an opportunity to do the poll in the Whova app, some of you gave us some answers for rigor. So I'm going to have Catherine share some of the answers that came up there, but I'd love to hear any additional things in the chat or from the in-person room. So we'll start with Catherine.
There's some great results here. So what does rigor mean to you? An increasing level of difficulty and demands for reader engagement with the text. We have complexity and increased complexity, which I really kind of like. Challenging enough to mean something. Structured, persistence, the pace of the teaching material. It depends on the context. Synthesizing, challenging and producing excellence, and preparing for real life in a habit kind of way.
Those are good answers. So anybody in person want to add to that? What do you think rigor is? That was a pretty meaty answer, wasn't it? Okay, so for our purposes today, what we're going to do is we're going to define rigor using this triangle right here. So we're going to talk about rigor in terms of practices that are high intentionality, high expectations, and high communications. So what we mean by high intentionality is purposeful planning and execution in all aspects of instruction and program management. High expectation is setting and maintaining challenging yet achievable goals for students and educators. And high communication for us is meaning clear, consistent, and data-driven interactions among educators, students, and stakeholders. And what we're going to talk about is how this combination of high expectations, high communication, and high intentionality have led in every area, onboarding, instruction, et cetera, really has led to incredible outcomes. And we'll show you with data as well. So I'm going to kick it off by passing this over to Emily, and she's going to start with chatting about some of the changes to onboarding and orientation that they made using that definition of rigor that we just introduced.
Yeah, so one of the changes that we have made this program year is we have gone completely to managed enrollment. I have been in adult ed for almost 14 years, and ever since up to this year, we have been an open program where students could start, stop whenever they wanted, kind of come into the classroom in the middle of the session, middle of the year, and really kind of start throwing off kind of how the instruction was happening. So one thing that we noticed is it's starting to impact our instructors. They were really struggling with keeping students on track, having to go back to get those students to where their current students were. So we went to a managed enrollment system this year, and everybody in Nebraska does it differently. We do 8-week sessions. So every 8 weeks, we're moving new students into our classes, and then also moving students out of our classes to higher levels based on their post-testing. So we also structured our ESL classes based on CASA's leveling, and also working with April and her team at Burlington to determine kind of which learners work well together. So in Norfolk and South Sioux City, primarily, we do have classes that our ESL runs from levels 1, and then 2 and 3 are together. 4 and 5 are together, and then 6 is separate. In some of my locations, we've kind of had to group those ones just because I don't have the instructors available for all of those. So that also came with some of the changes that we did. But one of the biggest pieces of it is our onboarding. We also looked at our onboarding, and when we were onboarding students, we were doing kind of one-on-one orientations with them. We gave them a PowerPoint, gave them a quiz, they kind of understood, yep, I need to do this many hours, and I'm going to test after this many. But we did not see the commitment level there. And so this year we structured our orientations to happen prior to a student stepping in the classroom. So if they want to go into a class that started in August, their orientation had to be done by August. We offered about 4 different orientation dates. We did it during the day, we did it at night, we did some one-offs here and there to catch some students that we might have missed. And that's how we've kind of continued throughout the year. So prior to, our classes are going about every 2 months is kind of when we're cycling new students in. So the month that we did not have any new students coming in, or the off month, that was kind of our big orientation piece with that. And we set our expectations high. We have an hour commitment per week that we have students do. We ask them to attend at least 5 hours per week, either in person or through using distance education. We've also implemented that after week 2 of a session, if you are not at 10 hours of instruction, you are asked what your goals are, and possibly stopping out until the next session or even to the next year, depending on your commitment level there. And that has also kind of helped with that participant versus enrollee retention. We have seen a large number of students either leave before that 12th hour because they knew that their time commitment was not going to be able to help us, and they understood our expectations and our reasoning behind why we didn't want that to do that. And then we've also seen the decrease of students that have separated from our program from years prior. We are tracking that very closely because I have learned in the past, comparing the number of students that leave and how many of them were maybe 10, 15 hours away from post-testing, how much that dramatically has impacted our performance. That has also kind of led to some of the decisions that we have made.
Emily, can I interrupt for a second?
Yep.
Make sure everybody understands the difference between the definition of participant and enrollee. Does anyone know the difference between those two terms? Okay, Emily, can you define those for us?
Yep. So the way I see participant is 12 plus hours. So they are counting against your NRS performance. And then an enrollee is just somebody who is in your program that has not hit that 12th hour yet.
Thank you for that, Emily.
Yes.
How many of you are managed enrollment at your program? Okay, how many of you are open enrollment? How many of you are both? Oh, we have a clear split. Okay, online we had some people who were both. So what I'd love for you to do for just a moment is turn and talk. I know it's after lunch and everybody wants to sit quietly, but please turn and talk about whether you like the open enrollment or managed enrollment, what you do like about it, what you don't like about it for your specific program. If you're virtual, please put in the chat for us what you like about your managed or open enrollment.
Please explain managed and open. Any open equals anytime, managed.
Yes.
Equipment levels increase.
Okay, so just for everybody to be on the same page, we have some questions online about what is open versus managed. So open is open-ended. They can come and go whenever they please. There are no expectations around number of hours they have to do, etc. Managed enrollment means they're on a schedule. We let people into classes every so many weeks, every so many hours, etc. Okay, so those of you in the room, if you would, a couple volunteers to share, what do you like about your managed enrollment, or what do you like about your open enrollment? And I'm going to bring you the mic, so don't be shy. Thank you.
One of the benefits we have of managed enrollment is when we schedule our number of weeks, if the majority of the students come for the majority of class, they will have their 40 to 60 hours, so I can get a post-test at the end of the session. So at the end of every session, I'm able to get post-tests instead of, well, this week you're ready and next. So that's one thing that I appreciate of managed. It depends on the calendar, because like we tried break at Christmas because we do a public school system schedule. So we take 2 weeks off in December. So we try to kind of where the natural breaks are in a general schedule. That's our session breaks.
Thank you. What about open enrollment? Does anybody have some pros about open enrollment you'd like to share? Okay, so we're all in agreement. Managed enrollment is the best. People tend to like open enrollment because they love the flexibility of it. It lets students kind of come in when they can and leave when they need to without them having to ask a lot of questions or give a lot of answers, right? But what research has shown, and what we can show you today too, just from the Nebraska programs, is that managed enrollment really leads to an increase in enrollment and really seems to lead to an increase in test scores as well. One of our colleagues from Central, actually, she is in a warm place on vacation this week, so she's not with us. But one of the quotes that she, comments she made in the midst of creating this presentation was, she said, the more rigorous our program seems to be, the more desirable it seems to be, which was a shock to everyone in Nebraska, because everyone figured that the more rigor we added, the less likely they would be to come. But really the opposite has happened. The more rigorous we are, the more likely they are to come to our program. Ryan or Jessica, do you want to add anything?
I would just say that in Crete, we have been working off of managed enrollment for quite some time. We got loose with it at times, depending on kind of some situations we were in, but by and large, we have tried to practice managed enrollment, and we feel like that is definitely a part of the success that we've seen.
Awesome. Jessica, anything? You just concur?
I do want to say, even though we switched over to managed enrollment, we are consistently having more and more students every year. So it has not impacted our growth.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we're going to show you a little bit of data. Oh, maybe. Where is the mouse? There it is. All right, so this is Northeast Community College program enrollment. We are comparing 23-24 to 24-25. Emily, can you give us a little more context about this?
Yeah, so as you can see, we did, just kind of like Jessica mentioned, that by moving to managed enrollment has not impacted our overall enrollment, and actually we have increased. I do want to put it out there that we did not add any additional classes or add any additional sites between the 2 years. So this number of students are coming to our program because they want to learn. And what I kind of just mentioned in the chat, they had kind of a question about my 8-week sessions. The orientation piece is what's driving this. We have a very structured orientation with these students that we're kind of gaining their commitment level at that orientation, and they're really leaving that orientation knowing these are my expectations as a student. And so that has also impacted how many of them have stayed in our program. We've seen, as you can see, we've seen a large increase of students this year. We are getting them into the classroom. We don't have any wait list or any students waiting to get into the classroom. So really working with our instructors to making sure we know who's coming session to session, so we're able to fill those empty seats. I did challenge my instructors this year that if they have classroom seats, we are going to fill those seats. So that has also been a change, where some of my classes might have been used to maybe a couple, like 10, 12 students. If there's capacity for 24, we're going to 24 now. So that has also kind of impacted this. I will say that over half of our students are participants. So again, that commitment level is there. Students are showing that they understand the expectations of the program. And one thing also with this is now you're thinking it, well, you're adding more learners. How is this impacting your overall NRS participation and performance? We are already meeting performance in April. So we feel we have a good handle of what's going on and making sure that we're staying where we need to be. So it all goes back to making sure you have that strong orientation and onboarding and student expectations.
Thanks, Emily. This next chart we have, again, mouse. There we go. So this is Central Community College from their level 1 class enrollment from July to January.
A little more information on that. Basics A and Basics B, those are both classes in our Grand Island location. And you can see between program 2024 and 2025 that it has increased, which was the opposite of what we had anticipated for our level 1 students. So it was a nice, happy surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, level 1s, we always, I think it's a general thing, right? Like we increase the rigor for level 1s, we assume, well, the expectations are too high now and they're not going to be as engaged. But what we're learning from these 3 incredible programs is that's the opposite. Actually, the more rigorous the onboarding, as we continue talking, the more rigorous the instruction, all of those things, we're actually retaining them better and we're attracting them a whole lot better. So awesome. Anything online?
Emily's done a nice job of explaining a little more deeply how their 8-week program works, because they have a 40-hour requirement and a post-test for students to be able to continue into that next session. So if a student doesn't meet those hour requirements or that testing requirement at the end, they have a intersession. They have a week built in between sessions to develop a plan for them to obtain hours and let them know again what the requirements are. Instructors track hours very closely and have conversations with students to keep them on track. We also have instructors ask students what their commitment is for the next session. And so we have an idea of how many are moving to the next and how many are leaving. We found that the orientation has been the biggest factor in building that commitment.
Awesome. So they know exactly what they're expecting when they walk in the door, right? They come in, they hear the whole thing and they go, oh, I can do that. Even though, again, it's higher expectations, they're saying, oh, I can do that. I can meet that. And I know every program does it a little differently. Jessica, your program, some of your sites are 11 weeks and some of yours are on like a tri-semester system.
So that was this last year. Most of our sites are on like a semester schedule. So all new students would start the first day in January, and then we'll be starting at the beginning of August this upcoming year. All of our sites are transitioning to that semester schedule, and it's been really nice because it gives students that 70 to 80 hours to post-test twice and really get gains out of them. And that's what we ask them for their commitment, is to come to class for a semester versus just the 40 hours.
Awesome. One piece of clarification, because I know every state's a little different on this. Nebraska does post-test every 40 hours. Does anybody else do that in your state? Okay. Some states only post-test every 40 hours if they haven't made a gain. And once they make a gain, they stop post-testing. Nebraska has to post-test every 40 regardless of whether they've made a gain or not. Yeah, okay, Iowa, they stop post-testing in Iowa once they've made a gain for the year, but Nebraska does it every time. Which is why in Nebraska, that 40 hours is so vital. Because if I have to post-test them again, regardless of their gain, I need to get their 40 hours. And if I get their 40 hours and they make a gain, they need to move to a different level, right? We don't want to just leave them languishing in a specific level the entire year. That's not good for the students. All right, we're going to move on now to our next component, which is instructional guides. Before I pass the mic to Ryan, let's define what do you think an instructional guide is? What does that mean to you? Online or in person? Any ideas? It's kind of like a syllabus, right? It's setting expectations for each class. So we know level 1 covers this, level 2 covers this, level 3 covers this. Okay, that's the idea behind an instructional guide. Ryan, would you give us some information on how this came about in Nebraska?
Yeah, I'd love to. So you may have heard April mention that really over the summer of 23, as we were going into our new program year, we had started even some months before that looking at our program. I was taking over as the director. I'd been the coordinator for several years, but we were really looking at how do we go to the next level? What do we need to do as a program to grow and to improve? We believe in continuous improvement, and we were evaluating what is it that as a program we need to do to get better. And so we really started looking at every part of our program. And it started with looking at orientation and onboarding and looking at classroom size and structure and curriculum. And we looked at our calendar, and we run a daytime program and an evening program. And our daytime program, we were able to operate it 3 days a week for about 3 hours a day. So we're like, they've got 9 hours. But our evening classes were 2 nights a week for about 2.5. And so we were looking at, well, that's only 5 hours. And when we were also then counting the number of days of class, our daytime program is really not impacted by much of what happens at school, but our evening program was. And we looked and we only had like 29 class periods at night. And we just said to ourselves, it's no wonder we're struggling with performance at night because we just don't have the days. And we had implemented Burlington several years before. We were using the Burlington curriculum, but we'd never actually really evaluated how to use it. And by that I mean like we didn't have a clear syllabus or clear structure, right? It was, this is here teacher, here's your level. This is the level that you're going to teach at. You start at lesson 1 and you work your way through it, right? And we said, that just does not seem to be getting us the performance that we're looking for. And I reached out, and it was really a group. I got my teachers together, my coordinator, myself, and we reached out to April and her team, and we said, we've got to change something. We have got to maximize every moment that we have in the classroom, and we need to be very intentional with what we are teaching and why. And we had looked at that throughout our program, and some of the changes that you've heard about have come about because as a program in Nebraska, we've started to look at these different aspects of our program and have said, okay, we need to be intentional. The word that we used all last year was intentionality. Everything that we do needs to have a purpose, and it needs to perform for us, or we need to reevaluate why we do it. And so April, thankfully, and her team there at Burlington took this on and said, you're right. So we said, okay, these are the needs of our students at these different levels. We looked at our data and our testing data, and we said, these are where our students are struggling at these different levels. And we said, okay, so now when we look into Burlington, what lessons are going to maximize the learning for those students for these skills? And over that summer, we worked together back and forth, and we created these instructional guides. It's the first time that we had ever done that. Again, generally we had just handed a level to a teacher and said, here you go, the lesson plans are in there, everything's in there that you need, you go for it. This was different, but I think what really made this special is we had input from the instructors in the entire process. We had really a curriculum team, and we looked at this. We were going back and forth with April and her team, and just trying to decide what was best for our students. And I mean, honestly, we didn't know if it was going to work, right? It was a pilot. We said, okay, we're going to try it this first semester, and we're going to see how it goes. And we implemented it. We did professional development around it, and then we tracked our progress, and we looked at how are the students performing, feedback from the staff and the teachers is how they felt it was working for them, and then we would modify, you know, that curriculum guide, and we've been revisiting that every semester with feedback back and forth. And one of the metrics, as you see here, was we like to track what's, if any of you are familiar with the NRS measures, it's called Table 4B, and it's the measurable skill gains of those that have post-tested. So not your entire student population, but just of those who have post-tested. And you'll see that in the 22-23 year, we hadn't even reached 60% of those who were taking a test were making a gain, and we got that all the way up to almost 80% in the 23-24 year. And it was just being intentional. And again, there was a lot of pieces that helped contribute to this, but one of the ones that we felt was most impactful was the fact that we were now intentionally teaching the skills and the material that the data was telling us our students needed to be successful. We just, because in our state, we believe in high performance, and we said we've got to achieve, and we need to be able to meet performance and exceed that even. And we were very fortunate to be one of the top performing programs in Nebraska this last year because of some of those changes that we've made.
Yeah, Crete started the trend, and then I think it was Northeast came second. They said, "Oh, we want to do instructional guides," and so we took and we did the same system we did with Crete, and we talked about their data and talked about their needs, and we built some guides with them. And we will. I think the next slide is actually some of Northeast data. I'll let Emily talk a little bit more about this, but we saw some incredible increases between. We did it kind of softly at Northeast, so we gave them the option. You can, if you want to, implement these, but you don't have to. And so, as with anything, if you give them an option, you're going to have a mix. So some really implemented it with fidelity, and some kind of went meh, and it didn't, or partially did. And so this chart here compares those pieces. I'll let Emily speak to it.
Yes, so Ryan and I talked about their instructional guides, and I was like, hey, that would really help our program, especially training new instructors, because it really defines their teaching. Like it gives them exactly what they need to do, what they need to cover each week. We worked with April and her team about, you know, this test is reading and listening. So we want to include those activities in their classroom because we got to get them familiar with those areas. And so as April said, the first year, we kind of gave our staff an option. Some of them are like, you know what I'm doing is working. I'm not quite ready there yet. And they didn't know kind of a lot about the new test either. And so they kind of went about their same way. So as you can see, the ones on the left-hand side of the screen, hopefully I'm saying it right for those in person, the darker blue and orange are our classes that use the guides and their EFL increase. And then the ones in the green and the lighter blue, those are the ones that did not use the instructional guides and didn't make an EFL gain based on being able to post test. So that showed me and my coordinator that, hey, these instructional guides are working, because we did find a lot of our students, when they transition from life and work to steps, there was a decrease. We saw like reading scores go down a level. We've seen listening scores go down a level because of the rigor of the test. And so we knew what we were doing before was not meeting the rigor of the new test. And that's where the reading and listening came into this piece. And by using the guides, we had teachers teaching and making sure they were hitting all 10 content standard areas before a student was testing, that we saw that these EFLs were happening. And they were happening on their first post-test, not the second post-test or a third post-test. So we went into it this year saying, we're sorry, ESL instructors, we're going to guides. We have the data behind us. Here's the data of those that use the guides. Here's the data of those that did not use the guides. Look at the difference here. We want to be a program, and we want to, as Ryan has mentioned, we want to perform very high. And in order to perform very high, we need to meet the rigor of the test. So that is where our guides have implemented, and as you can see, it definitely has changed our program. I think we also, and Ryan will agree with this, we continue to make tweaks to them because we find, little pieces here and there. I'm already strategizing for next year, and I've already talked to like April about things that now I'm looking at. We saw an increase in our level 2 learners. They were kind of a lower performer for our program. Now they're one of the higher performers of our program just by hitting their guides at the right level. That now I'm looking at, well, what about these level 6 students? So April and I are already having those conversations about, okay, we need to do some tweaks to our level 6 guides because I'm starting to see students plateau. I just need to figure out how to get them over the hump. But that has allowed me as a program director to really dive into that data and really look at those instructional guides and making sure that we're getting the students what they need.
And just for perspective, so like comparing and contrasting, previously in all of these programs, they pretty much, like Ryan said early on, would say level 1, here's the book you're going to use, right? But then how the teacher went about that was up to them. They might start at module 1, lesson 1, and just work as far as they could get in 8 or 16 weeks, and then they'd start all over again. Right? Some would work as far as they could in 8 weeks, and then they'd get a bunch of new students on the second 8 weeks, but they would just keep going. So then what happens? All those newbies have missed all of this stuff, and now they're more lost during this stuff, right? But every teacher was doing it differently. So what this allowed us to do was to create that consistency, that reliability across the whole program. So we weren't just looking at depth, but we were also looking at breadth across the entirety of the program. And I think that's part of what has led to so much of the success, is because students know everybody's doing this, right? It's not just my class is really hard. It's everybody's class is really rigorous, okay? They're all getting something out of it, and they know if they need to switch classes or move around, they can do that with ease, and they're not going to be missing out on anything. Okay. CCC was the last one to jump in on this one. They said after seeing Crete be the top performer last year, and then Northeast seeing such increases like you just heard, CCC said, we want in. Can we do it too? So we're doing the same thing this year with them as well. We're still gathering all of the data on that, but what we're seeing is something very similar to what we saw with Emily's data at Northeast, is that the classes that are using the instructional guides have sometimes double the EFL gain compared to those that are not. They're using the same curriculum, but one is using it with more intentionality, which is increasing the rigor, and one is not. And so we're getting these really stark differences.
Go ahead and ask your question. Well, here.
When you say using it with more intentionality, what does that mean exactly? And is there an expectation that you should reach a certain point, or is it just you go as far as you can and then you reset and keep going back?
So I'll speak to this first, since we did this first. We
Yeah.
developed it to work within our semester. And so that curriculum guide, if you were to see the entire guide, would, it has our weeks that we're going to have class and the number of classes, and then it has what lessons and activities they're going to complete in that week. And so our program runs off the semester system, and those classes, then we don't let any new students in during that semester. So those students are going through that curriculum guide with that instructor in that semester. At the semester, then we have a break usually between them. And when they come back, if that student has made level gains in their testing throughout that semester, then they're offered the ability to move up to the next level. If they have not, they would remain at that level, and that teacher is going to go back and then repeat that level. So they'll go back to the beginning of that instructional guide and teach it again, because they're teaching level 2, let's say, and that's what that teacher does. Each semester, they start back over and they teach that level. And the idea being that if that student, for whatever reason, didn't get the material, they're able to go back and repeat that. Because kind of to April's point earlier, what would happen is if I gave low beginning to a instructor and said, okay, here you're going to be the low beginning teacher, basically that teacher would start in August at the beginning of that level, and then would teach it all the way through the year. And so, right, we'd add students at the quarter or at the semester, but they would just have to pick up wherever the teacher was. And it just was not working for the teachers or the students. And with intentionality, I mean, again, we've tried to make it very clear to just instructors and ourselves that, again, these are the weeks that we have class and these are the lessons and the activities that they're going to do. Now, I'm not sitting there harping on them. I'm not sitting there watching every class that they do, trying to be sure that they're exactly on target. But we do staff meetings once a month, and we do review with staff as a group. How is this going? Where are you at? What struggles are you having, so that we can be sure we support them.
And just to add a little more to that definition of intentionality, we really had conversations with the staff about CASAs and about the different modalities. So we said, okay, reading, writing, speaking, listening, grammar. What do you think is most important in your opinion? And then we would discuss it. And we'd say, what do you think is least important in your opinion? And then we would discuss it. And we had to all come to an agreement on, if I have limited time and limited resources, which we all do, what are we going to focus on? So are we going to have our whole class be grammar? Probably not the best use of our time, was the decision that they made, because we got to get in these other pieces too. And it's so easy to get lost in the grammar if all we're doing is grammar. Or even like some teachers would do like half of their class would be grammar, but it's just a general ELL class. Then students get so ingrained in it, and then that's all that they want to do, and it caused some problems for these programs. And so we really narrowed it down and said, okay, what are they assessed on? Well, they're assessed on reading and they're assessed on listening. So we have to directly instruct reading, and we have to directly instruct listening. So while our curriculum has, like Burlington, the curriculum that they were using, we've got some incredible lessons on life skills and writing and other things. We said, well, maybe in semester 1, we're going to focus on the reading ones and the listening ones. And maybe in semester 2, we'll add in the writing ones, right? But we got really intentional about what we were doing. And we were very mindful of, if we were skipping a lesson, why were we skipping a lesson, and how are we going to come back and cover it, or how are we going to cover it in that next lesson? Does that make more sense? Okay.
Right.
Absolutely. And so I totally get it. And if you want to chat more later, we absolutely can. Anybody who wants to chat more, we can. This is a visual of kind of what we did. So some programs also determined that they wanted to have, like, we want every teacher as a best practice to start off class with an opener, right? So they wanted the teachers to come up with things that you could easily do as an opener. So we would list that out for them. We gave them an approximate, right? If it helps you, 20 minutes a day. If it doesn't, take 10, take 30, whatever works for you, right? But then we would have the lessons, and we paced this out for them. So in this week here of January 13th, they had 3 days of class. It is realistic to complete these in those 3 days of class. We made sure we weren't overburdening them. We were just giving them, here's for sure what to complete, but they had a buffer of time so they could do other things they wanted to do. They could get creative, they could have celebrations, etc. But this is the minimum that we want you to do. And then some programs wanted to do more writing, and then we always specify what the students are to do outside of class. And that's a whole other piece we'll talk about in a second.
There were some questions in the chat about whether these guides are available as handouts for the presentation, or.
Instructional guides are catered to your classes and programs. So I'm sorry, but no.
If you want to see some more full-length examples, my contact information will be at the end of this, and you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to send you a full-length example so you can see one way that we've set it up. But we have, at CCC, we customize it by site even. So we've got like 6 different guides, because we talked to the teachers and said, do you want a checklist? Do you want it to be something like a calendar, something like what you see on the screen? What do you want it? What will work for you, right? And we did talk to them about, we want to think about longevity here. So we don't want to be creating something now and then recreating it for every new teacher that comes in, but we did cater it to whoever's there right now. So, all right. Let me get back in front of my hello online people. Okay. So our last component we're going to take a look at here is classroom best practices and teaching strategies. So this is something that my team and I, it was really interesting. My team and I, as kind of the PD people for these programs, because that's essentially how we function, is we support them with all of their professional development and anything else, I guess, they need. I make really good notebook recommendations, I guess. So we noticed that the switch to CASA steps really got teachers way more focused on what was happening in the minutia in the classroom. For example, I went into a classroom at CCC one time, and this teacher was doing this really fun activity, right, where the students had like filmed themselves with videos and they were showing the videos. But there was, as I observed, there was a ton of wasted time, right? Because students would watch, but only kind of, and they weren't like doing anything. They weren't listening for language. They just were watching. That's what they were told to do. So then you'd have students on their phones, kind of like off to the side. That's wasted time, right? And so the teacher had spent so much time on that activity, which was really cool, but she hadn't thought about what were they doing during the report out of said activity, right? And so we're able to have way more conversations at that level and say, well, why did you opt to let it be free range versus asking them to maybe write down 5 words that they understood, right? Or write down 5 new words that they heard the person say, or some sort of task like that, right? And we're able to have those conversations at a way new level than what we've ever been able to have before. So we're also able to talk more about small groups. A lot of times teachers would get very overwhelmed because they'll have like levels 2 and 3 in one room. What do you do? How do you manage that? Well, one really effective way is to do small groups. And for some people that comes really naturally, and for some people it does not come naturally in the slightest. And so we're able to spend more time. We have talked about this before. This isn't new information to them, but for some reason, the switch and the rigor and CASA steps made them go, maybe this, it makes sense, right? It seemed to click something in their minds. And so we're able to talk more about use of volunteers and effectively how to use them. We talk a lot more about student goals and blended learning, being data-driven. These are all topics we have discussed before, but they seem to be clicking as we have increased the rigor of the test and the rigor of all the other components. They seem to be clicking more. So we're really having some much deeper conversations. We also, when we talk about it being data-driven, because they're using Burlington English, we can look at things like time on task. Does anybody know how to define time on task? It's okay if you don't. Anybody online know how to define it? Okay. So time on task, if you're in any online program, time on task is the actual time they're spending engaging in the material, not navigating, the actual time they're engaging. That's a federal requirement that all online programs have a time on task. They have to be able to track that, or they cannot be, their time cannot be reported for distance ed time, okay? So because we have that information as they work in Burlington English, because they have an expectation that they work outside of class, which they're very willing to do, we sometimes just have to teach them how to make it a priority. So we'll have lots of conversations with them, and we coach the teachers first, and then the teachers coach the students, but coaching them in learning about learning how to maximize their time. You are telling me you want to be here as a student, right? Because you want to learn English. If you want to learn English, I'm telling you 6 hours a week ain't gonna cut it. You're not gonna learn the language and become proficient if you're only here 6 hours a week. So how do we increase the amount of time that you spend practicing the language? We do that, in this case, through the use of Burlington English, and we talk to them about 10 minutes a day. Where do you have 10 minutes a day? In the bathroom? Anybody? Anybody? Right? Where do you have 10 minutes a day when instead of doing TikTok, right? instead of scrolling Facebook when you're picking your kids up from school, when you're waiting in traffic, whatever it happens to be, don't do that. Don't do it in traffic. But when you're waiting to pick up your kids from school and you're parked. So we coach teachers through that process of helping them understand how to have those conversations. Because we do that, we have things like time on task from their student lessons or their vocab practice. And then we also can go into some minutia and really look at, but how did they do on that activity? How did they do on that lesson? And we teach the teachers how to interpret that information. What do we do with that? And what conversations do we have then as a result of it? Catherine?
I have a question in the chat about students sometimes say that Burlington is not giving them all of the time and credit that they are due. And can you address if the program is really working and perhaps if they are reading and maybe not moving the mouse, things like that?
Yeah, if you do find a problem, if you're a Burlington user and you find a problem, send it to whoever you work with on the team. We have our ways of investigating and telling you whether or not they're actually working or something is wrong with the recording at that moment. Most of the time, in my experience, and this is with any program, because I was an adult and I was a teacher before I ever worked for Burlington, and I worked with lots of online programs when I was doing that. Most of the time, it's the student not engaging with the lesson the whole time. So they'll say, oh, vocabulary words. They'll stop engaging with the screen and they'll just start writing. Well, once they're writing, there's no video camera to monitor them. So the only way that the system knows you're engaged is because you're actually engaging with the screen. So then I go back and teach students tests like note-taking skills, right? Write the word, listen to the word, write the word down. Look at the translation, for example, write down the translation and then repeat that process with every word. That way, you're not just copying and you're not just listening, you're doing both all along the way. And when we do that, when we have those conversations, the recording issue typically goes away. So this chart here, when we're talking about engagement of students, again, as we continue to increase the rigor, we're seeing an increase in engagement. So this chart here is tracking Burlington English student usage across Septembers, starting in 2022. So the blue on the left is 2022, the orange then is 23, and the green is 24. So for context, in 22, we were still on the old test. We were working off of a less rigorous CASAS life and work test. In 23 was the big year of implementation, right? That was when the cost steps changed, and then every program was making lots of little other changes. So you can see there was a dip there in that year, which makes perfect sense. But then if we look at this year, so we look at 2024, not this year, last year, 2024, that's not a fluke. That's definitely statistically significant, right? So there is a huge jump in the engagement of the students once they're in this new rigorous rhythm, rigorous onboarding, rigorous instruction, rigorous expectations about what they do outside of class. All of that coming together is leading to these really incredible engaging numbers. Anything to add, panelists? Let's talk next steps then. I'm going to start with Jessica, and she's going to chat with you about where they're headed next in this process of increasing the rigor of their program.
So one of the things that we had just met in March this last month, and we wanted to continue with the intentionality. Now, one of our sites has implemented, we call it an 8 to 10 hour commitment form, where we have an actual form, but really what it is a conversation with the student, like, hey, this is what you got on your scores. That's why you're in the class you're in. Do you think you are going to be able to continue? How are you feeling about this? It's a reality check, basically. And, if the student is gung-ho, fabulous, we move right along. And we can kind of get a read on students who are like tentatively committed. So it's nice. And then we can always offer the option, like, if this is not a good time for you right now, like your schedule is crazy with kids, why don't you come back in August and we can try this again? Maybe it'll be a better time.
Awesome. Emily, you want to go next?
So one thing, I've already mentioned that we're looking at those level 6 students. We see them, they get to the 232, then they go back down to 230, then they get back up to 233. It's just getting over that little bit of hump. So we're working with April and her team on that. We've also really focused on becoming a data-driven program. So we work with April and her team to do trainings on that too. So when she mentioned she's showing the instructors how to track the progress, how they're looking at what the students are completing and not completing. Those are all things that we're putting on the instructors to show that, yes, this class is working, or no, this class isn't working the way the guides are supposed to. And then our other next step is we will continue the same orientation process for next year. Same 8-week sessions, and we'll see what we have there. I do want to kind of hit back on that Burlington, like not counting enough time. In Nebraska, we can assign homework hours. So when my students come in and say, I worked 3 hours on Burlington last night, and I pull up the report and I'm only seeing an hour, I will talk to them about actively moving their mouse. So if they're reading, I tell them, like, just follow along with the mouse, because then your mouse is moving. But the biggest challenge we have seen is when they're doing it on their phone, because it's harder to scroll on your phone and do different things there. So we allow them to do a remote timesheet that they can bring in. They have to demonstrate the work that they're doing. So if a student comes in and their notebook has 15 vocabulary words, maybe they wrote a sentence about each word out, we're able as instructors then to determine how much time we really want to give them on that.
That's a great modification, Emily. Great idea. Ryan, how about you? What's next?
Well, I hope you guys have been able to see that we've really tried to help you understand that what we're talking about does work. We're using data to demonstrate that we've seen progress with it. In Crete, it's a continuous process. We constantly evaluate our data. We have, again, these monthly PD sessions with our instructors to get feedback. April and her team are invited to many of those sessions so that they're able to ask questions and share data from their end that we don't always get to see. And it really becomes a collaboration between the program administrators and our instructors and the support team here at Burlington to try to help us continue to look at what do we need to do next, whether do we need to modify a certain level. Does a teacher need help with additional professional development? Do we need to look at adjusting our orientation onboarding? The word that, again, I mentioned it earlier, the word that we've really used in our program, and I think across the state, has been intentionality. For us to be successful, everything we do needs to have a purpose. We don't just do it because it has been done, or we don't just do it because we think it might work. We implement something, we track it, we look at the data that comes from that, and then we decide whether we're going to keep it, modify it, or do away with it. Because we just don't have the time and the resources, as April said earlier, to have things that waste our time. So our students, when they come to us, they don't want their time to be wasted. And obviously, from a program perspective, we just don't have resources to just throw into the wind. So this has been a great exercise for us. We're excited about where it's taking us. And, we just look forward to continuing to improve.
Thank you to our attendees and thank you to our panelists. If you have questions for the panelists specifically, they've asked questions just to go through me. So feel free to just contact me. That's my cell phone or my email. Let me know you have a question for the panelists and I will pass it along and help referee that and get you the right information. If you have questions for me, feel free we can hang out until they kick us out of the room. You can also come down to the booth at 301. I will be there the rest of the day. And we have a couch and tables and you can come just hang. We also have charging capabilities. So come on down and charge your phone and hang out for a little bit. We have more candy down there. On your seats, you should have a notebook and then an invitation to a networking session this evening. Those of you who are online, we're having a networking session at booth 301 tonight at 5 o'clock. There will be food, so please feel free to come, say hello and snag some food. And then my colleague Sam here, who happens to be from Lincoln, is going to help us out. He's going to pass out this, what is it called? A case study that our team did on these 3 programs in Nebraska. It's just front and back, but it goes through some more of the data and information we found over the last year as we have worked together on this project. If you are online, that is uploaded for you, so you should be able to access that case study through the Whova app as well. If you have questions, we will take them now. Otherwise, we'll see you later. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Go for it. Here, I'll give you the mic so that otherwise Emily and Ryan can't hear you.
No worries. Okay, so I have a couple questions. When you have, so to clarify, you have in classroom classes and then you also have virtual classes, like 2 separate ones. So when Jose comes and says, I can only come on Tuesdays because I work, then do you say, well, then I think the virtual is your option? Or do you let Jose only come on Tuesdays and then he misses Wednesdays and Thursdays? How do you handle that? That's my first question. And then second question is, okay, I want to do virtual. They come and say, I want to be in the virtual class, but all I have is an iPhone 4. How do you provide computers or whatever devices for them? How do you handle that? Those are my 2 questions.
So if a student, we offer like 1 class 2 times a week. If a student can only attend 1 time, the expectation is that, you know, the lesson for that class that they are missing is going to be communicated with them, and they need to have it completed by the next time that they come in. So then they aren't missing material, they aren't falling behind. Yes, yes. They would do it at home, yes. Correct. They're not getting face-to-face instruction, but they are still getting the material that is covered in class. Remind me of part 2.
If they have a flip phone,
okay.
How do they do?
So the question is for devices, older technology that is not compatible with Burlington English or Zoom or all of that. That's kind of a tough one. I don't see it all that often. But I know with CCC, we do have the capability for students to check out a laptop. We also, one of the nonprofits that we partner with, they have a free tablet program. So they get grant funds to purchase Amazon Fire tablets because they're $150 a piece versus a $500 iPad, where we're able to download Burlington English and they can work from there. Granted, that is after they have completed their 40 hours and post-tested. So that also helps with the retention piece. So good questions.
To piggyback off of that, then what about your students that are digitally not literate? Like they don't know how to use a mouse. They've never used a mouse. They don't know the computer skills. They don't have the computer skills. So does somebody work with them until they're ready to be on their own?
In what capacity? Like as far as using Burlington English or the CASAS testing in life in general? Okay. Okay.
Never seen a computer in their life until they were 50 years old when they came to the United States. So for me to just say, well, go on your phone and online and do this, they would never be able to.
So students mainly working in Burlington English or attending the remote classes who don't have the digital literacy skills to access that on their own. So that is actually part of our lesson plans for when students first join classes. We're going to sit down with them, have them log into their BE account, work through a lesson. So the teachers are training the students. And then some of our teachers even offer independent BE study time for like the first 5 minutes of class for our students who are early. So then if they have questions, if they are struggling, that is addressed then in the classroom. But then we also, when we monitor their time, because BE seats are expensive and funds are limited, we turn off accounts if they haven't been active for 2 weeks. And so if somebody's not using it, they don't get access to it.
Emily and Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
So we do a little bit of digital literacy during our orientation process. So we utilize North Star Digital Literacy, so we're able to test them right away, determining kind of where their computer skills are, and then prior to coming to class, they can always work on those lessons, so they're really working in their digital literacy program. Also during orientation, we help them get onto Burlington English. We show them how to sign in. We show them the sign in video and show them actually how to even change it to their native language. So we're providing that in there. If they are taking a remote class, we utilize either Zoom or Teams depending on my instructor. So that instructor kind of guides them through that the first day of class. Like, here's how you sign in. Once you sign in the first time, now it stays. Then you just got to click this button again, kind of thing. I don't have a lot of students that don't have that have kind of the outdated technology. Most of them are able to utilize the program, or they take the night class when their child is at home and they have a Chromebook. They use their child's device to take the class at home. We don't have any way of checking out computers, laptops, tablets, anything like that in our program, but we're trying to find some additional ways to help them out. But primarily, if they're going to go in a remote class, we tell them they have to have the technology available.
Yeah, and I would agree
it's
with
gonna be on
of
the
what Emily
training them
said
at
there.
orientation, right?
So what?
That's a good question. Would you like me to have them type up kind of an outline and email it to you? Does that work? Do you have a card I could have? Or I can have you, I'll scan that. Yep, you got it. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Everybody
Perfect.
else has been to has not been the same world. It's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
Exploding with 100 students
right.
in my center. So we're so much smaller. So it's just different.
Yeah. Ryan and Emily, her program is about the size of yours, Ryan. And so
Oh,
she's
sure.
just telling us it's really refreshing to hear some conversation around programs that are her size. So,
And I 100% agree. I hate going to conferences and hearing about big metropolitan programs that have all the resources and you can't do anything.
And I
yeah,
mean, even for us, we have locations that internet is very spotty. So we've had to adapt to
right,
those.
right. Thank you both. Great job.
We're very welcome.
And
Thank you.
this will be recorded and posted, I believe. So,
Perfect. Well, I hope it's warmer there than it is here today.
oh, what's the weather there today?
It's like 40 and rainy in Norfolk. It's
Ugh.
kind of chilly today.
It is
It's
chilly
been
here. It's
rainy
not
here, but
raining,
not
but it
40.
is rather gloomy. So I would say what a great way for me to end my
Yeah.
tenure in adult ed. This is
You'll be
wonderful.
missed, Ryan.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and end it so that the next group can come on in.
Perfect.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
I did.